What are China's plans when it comes to the International Organization for Mediation, or IOMed as they're calling it? What are the implications, the ramifications of such an organization? Can China really be a peacemaker? Joining me in an exclusive conversation on our global network is Howard Zhang, senior China analyst, former chief editor of BBC News Chinese. Howard, thank you so much for joining us over here. How do you think the West, particularly the United States of America, but largely the West, is looking at this development, given that this certainly is aimed at and is targeting the West when it comes to China trying to be peacemaker?
Exactly. And first of all, this is no, I guess, new move. It's a continuation of China's strategy of going after what they so-called global South. And back in Beijing, and documents after documents show that the Communist Party leading the country realized they're in a fight with US-led the West. And their conclusion is the current world order needs to be reset into what they called a multipolar world. And hence, if they cannot win over the leading Western nations to their sphere of influence, then the only way is to broaden their foothold in the global South. And this is just another step in the diplomatic as well as the more geopolitical kind of play, trying to win over as many as possible and also to broaden China's influence.
Well, interesting, because there are countries that are joining in, but with China herself involved in so many disputes, how can then Howard China really play peacemaker?
I guess it's using a word recently used by the British Prime Minister Starmer. This is going to be a coalition of the willing, and China, possibly whoever is pushing for this initiative, understands it is unlikely at the very beginning to have any heavyweights from the West, not even its neighbors like India or any of the other countries. But it's gotten some Southeast Asian countries. It's gotten Pakistan, and even a European nation like Serbia. So there's some voices, dissenting voices from the fringe of the mainstream global order that's willing to join China. And so at least China now gained some influence, at least from its own calculation, in the mediation sphere.
Well, but again, Howard, I'd like to ask you, China itself is involved in disputes when it comes to Taiwan, the South China Sea, including a dispute with India. In such a scenario where they themselves are caught in so many problems and disputes, how can they be mediators?
Well, that's I guess, a matter of perspective. It's the same thing as, when we talk about the Ukraine war, and Russia will have a different perspective than many of in the rest of the world. Rest of the world would see this as an invasion, and Russia would see themselves as defending their own interest. So that's the difference in perspective. The same thing here. From the Chinese side, especially the current ruling party side, they are trying to fight their corner and fight a way out in the current unjust world order. At least the world order is not giving the due respect to China. So in a way, if the current order is not tolerating China's what they consider legitimate voice and existence, then they have to fight their own corner and get their own voice heard. So whether this is they themselves are involved in so many disputes and border-wise and otherwise, that's another matter. For them, they just need their voice and influence to be heard, and that's why they're basing that in their own territories. And they got enough member to join to have a start.
Exactly, Howard. More than 30 countries joining China is also telling story. It tells the world that no matter what you say that you're trying to isolate China, China is not isolated here.
Well, again, it's a matter of perspective. And in the broader sense, if we talk about the mainstream countries, and there's still a lot more countries who are when push comes to shove, will have to align themselves with U.S. and Europe and the rest of the bigger economies and the political forces. But of course, China has gotten a foothold, and even during, I guess, if we look back at history, even during the Cold War in the 60s and 70s, when China was a lot more isolated than today, they still had, quote unquote, friends in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa. So this Go Global South strategy, it's just a modern day version of how do you deal with when you are pressed against a war in so to speak, when the U.S. is pursuing what they call the strategic rivalry, and China sees their, some officials even described as their, neck being ringed and their bottom line being really, really threatened.